Well, I mean, it's always hard. It's still hard to this day. I think I'm better now at the balancing than I once was, but it's always something that, you know, it's a day-by-day decision to wake up and how do I fit this in and how do I fit that in, and let me get some of this and let me get some of that. So what I did in my initial college years, when I had a lot of general education requirements to fulfill, my schedule was very easy to manipulate.
Right.
I was able to stack my classes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
You know, so I was out of class by noon every day. So my son was in, at that point, a subsidized preschool. So I wasn't paying for his preschool, which was good. And then I could pick him up myself, and we took the bus together at that point. And then I could go home and spend some time with him, and then study some, and then spend some, you know, I had the rest of my day to figure out where to put the studying, where to put the taking care of him, and kind of make it all, like, you know, as flexible as I could. And then as I got into later years of college, as my days got longer, and maybe I had specific classes I needed, and one was offered at 2 and one was offered at 10, and it didn't make sense to go back in between. My son, luckily at that point, was in like kindergarten and 1st grade, where there's after school care programs, and he had a great person. He was in the same program for 5 years, a great person running the program who loved him and was really just an understanding, supportive sort of person. And so I would pick him up at the end of my school day, but since I would have gaps in my schedule, I'd fit things in that were needed for my, you know, like studying, or since I was in theater program rehearsing, or I'd fit it in between my classes, and then go home and be a mom at the end of the day, which is what a lot of working mothers do.
But tell me a little bit about the judgments that people made on you, like when you were a teenager, when you were 17 and you have a 1-year-old, or 18 and you have a 1-year-old, or whatever. I'm sitting here going, if you got pregnant at 16, so that's 17, so maybe you're 18 when you had a 1-year-old, depending upon what month it fell
Where your
on.
birthday is.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. So when you were a teenager, tell me about, like, when you'd go to a store, would people make comments? Would they make judgments on you? Would they assume it's a sibling as opposed to, excuse me, your own child?
I still get that to this day, the sibling thing. I had to leave an acting class the other night early because my mother was out of town, and he's old enough to be at home, but I don't like to leave him for too long, so I only went to class for half the time, and the teacher doesn't know that I have a child because I just started this class like a month ago. And I said something about, having to leave because my son's at home, and I know they were picturing like a 5-year-old, you know, like, your son's at home by himself. I'm like, no, he's 13, and it's just, I just left him a couple hours.
I'm not a bad mom.
Yeah, I swear.
Relax.
And then they're looking at me and they go, "You mean your brother, right? Your brother, right? You're joking, right? You're not your son. Your brother." And then the teacher actually thought he really did hear me say brother. Like, the other person I was talking to was joking around about it. But he actually goes, "Oh, right, your brother." I'm like, "No, really, my 13-year-old son." And they said, "Oh, wow, we thought you were like 22, 23. And I was like, "Great, that's great. I'm glad I'm still looking young."
But no, it's still a 13-year-old
really,
son.
He's still 13. I'm still 30. But so people still get shocked now. And you can imagine when I was 17, I didn't look 17. I looked 15. I looked 14. And I did get people who, in the grocery, I have this distinct memory of a woman in the grocery store, and my son's in the cart, and I'm pushing him, and I don't know if he said mom or if he didn't say mom or what made her turn and really stare at us, but she just started lecturing me as I'm walking out of Vaughn's, and I thought, oh my gosh, she just, "You're too young to have a child that old. How old are you, 12? And she just went off on me. And looking at her and saying, "No, I'm 17," which is still amazingly young, but compared to her view of the situation, it was at least a little better.
It was like a few years older.
At least I wasn't 10 when I had him,
And that's what's funny, is because I have a friend named Jada, and she got pregnant when she was a teenager, and she tells these stories on how people just say, "Oh no, that's not your son." No, I mean, she's still fairly young, and it's like, "No, that's not your son, no." And then she looks young, like you do. She looks really young, and people all the time will give her comments on, "Oh, do you know that you shouldn't have a kid that young?" And she's like, what is this? They don't even know that maybe their child got pregnant and decided to have an abortion as opposed to deciding to have a kid. So for some reason, she says, the ones of us that decide when we get pregnant as a teenager to actually decide to have the child, for some reason we're looked at worse than those who actually say, okay, well, I'm going to have an abortion. And how is that? It's because you have this thing out here for everybody to see.
Right, right. And they look at you and how old you look compared to how old your child looks, and they just make a snap judgment. And I'm sure a lot of it's influenced by whatever stereotypes they have of what a teenage mother is. You know, she's a high school dropout, and she's not smart, and
she's probably a minority.
Right.
And
oh
she's
yeah, there's
probably,
always that.
I mean, and that's just it. Is that before I, found out that this friend was pregnant and whatnot, I was one of those people. I thought, okay, because you hear all these negative stories about teenage mothers. You hear that they're dropouts. They actually they can't make anything out of themselves because they have this kid that they have to look out of, and then they end up having another one, and then they're on welfare forever. You hear all these things, and all these stories all these negative stories you hear somehow outweigh anything else that you would consider about a teenage mother. Right. And it's about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, that my friend was a teenage mother. And the thing is that you find this out, and your perspective totally changes. Because I mean, she was straight A student, she was at the top of her class, kind of like you were saying that you were, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, so this doesn't happen to just that minority people who are being rebellious, who are in the wrong crowd. It can really happen to anybody.
Right. Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at statistics, it's not like 10% of high school students are having sex. You know, it's a lot bigger number than that. And at that age, a lot of teenagers aren't responsible enough to think, like you're saying, like give that teenage attitude of it's not going to happen to me. You don't think through the consequences. You're still learning that part of yourself to understand consequences, and that way you still are a child. But
the thing is you have adults who are like that too.
Right.
The only difference between what happened to you and an adult lady who gets pregnant is the age. Right.
Exactly. And maybe she's better prepared to maybe financially provide. Not all the time.
There's a lot of adult women who are I'm like
but they might be. But that's just coincidence a lot of the time. If it wasn't planned for them either, that's a coincidence that they happen to be at a time in their life that they maybe have a little more of a financial
It's just
stability.
luck that they got pregnant later in life, and somebody brought up a good point to me that there's a lot of teenagers out there having sex, and it's luck for the ones who don't get pregnant, and it's unlucky for the ones who do, and that's just it. I mean, it's not. I mean, yeah, there's other things, protection, all that play a part in, but I mean, you can still get pregnant using protection stuff. So, so tell me about how your son has affected your life now, or like the judgments and the stereotypes maybe that you still get now.
From schools is probably the first thing that comes to mind. Like, I'm still a scaredy cat about going into a school and having like the normal meet the teacher beginning of the year thing, like not like a conference like he's done something bad or anything, but where you go in to kind of just like say, I'm so-and-so's mom, and they're his teacher for whatever subject. I still really shy away from that because I feel like I do get talked to a lot differently there, and then it almost works against him because then, say he doesn't have a piece of homework done, there's snap judgment about why that homework's not done. Oh, there's not enough structure in the home, and it's maybe there's no way. Short of rating his book bag at this point, he's 13.
Right.
I ask him what his homework is, and he tells me. Granted, he doesn't have like a consistent problem with his homework, or else maybe I might be digging in the bag.
Right.
But there is that aspect when I talk to teachers. I mean, some of them are a little more understanding about it, but I go in and I feel like not only am I coming to as a very young mother of a 13-year-old, I'm also coming without, I'm pursuing a career that's in pursuit, and so not only am I the teenage mother, I didn't like. Most people would prefer that if you are, I can't speak for people, but the judgments I've gotten is that if you are going to go ahead and have a child and raise a child, then all of your decisions need to be about that, and you need to, find a way to make a living that's solely about that and give up completely on what your own personal dreams might have been.